going to resolve itself while we're in the midst of this. The second thing is that, as I mentioned, for those that you were already on the call before, we are going to allow anybody to speak at any point with a question or a point that you want to, something you would like to ask Professor Belitsky. The only thing that we ask is that you please be careful to not make any noise. That includes things like typing or conversations and things of that sort that would make it difficult for others to hear Professor Belitsky speak. This is a presentation again on research in international human rights law, and we have the distinct pleasure of having as our presenter Professor Ariel Belitsky, who is clinical professor of law and director of the Human Rights Clinic, and also the director of the Latin American Initiative at the University of Texas. Professor Belitsky is a leading expert in the Inter-American human rights system, and in 2010 he was appointed to the United Nations Working Group on enforced or involuntary disappearances. Before coming to the University of Texas, he was an assistant executive secretary for the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, of the OAS, and he's a graduate of the University of Buenos Aires School of Law, has an LLM from Harvard Law School, and in 2007, he won the Gary Bello Public Service Award from Harvard Law School. I had to say that. He also has directed litigation in more than 40 cases in front of the Inter-American Commission in Court on Human Rights. So we're very lucky to have him with us today, and hopefully you're still with us. Are you with us?
Yeah, I am here.
All right, take it on.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nelson, and thank you everybody for being here. And I will probably start by saying that my presentation today will focus mainly on human rights research online and try to help you to find some of the materials that you will need in your work. Can you hear me, or is a strange noise? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We can hear you, yes. There is some feedback for some reason.
Okay. So basically my talk today will focus on research online and how you can find some of the main human rights sources that you may use in your work, particularly if you are doing some litigation and you are trying to find either the pertinent documents, treaties, or declarations, and how to cite them, and if you need to find some of the main cases. But having said that, I would say that for all of you, it will be really, really important if you can get at least one of the main human rights books, general books, because some of the basics are there and are almost impossible to find online unless you really know what you are looking for. So I have a list of materials that we have here at the library at the law school, but anywhere you can find some of these introductory books where you find the basis. And my experience is that really it's very difficult to find many of the human rights materials unless you know where to start your search. So any of these documents, the Washington College of Law also has a great collection of human rights materials. So I would encourage you to take a look at least at one of those materials. And there are several research guides that you can find. For instance, this one is online at the Law Library of the University of Texas. You can access, and if you see on where I am now, you can get access to the different human rights system, the United Nations system, the European system, the Inter-American system, and other secondary sources and information on different countries. For instance, that could be useful if you are doing an asylum case where you are trying to find the information on the particular country. So the first thing that I will focus on is on the United Nations. As Nelson was saying, it wasn't working, the website, and let's see if it's working now. Let's see. But in the United Nations website, the main website that you want to visit is the website of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And well, now it's working, excellent. So this is the website of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and basically it's an excellent website with a lot of information, but it's not friendly user, and unless you know how to move around, it's very difficult to find materials. The starting point probably to look at different materials in the website, you go to the country section, and where it says human rights in the world, there you can find everything that the United Nations has said on any particular country, including the treaty, the human rights treaty that country has ratified. So if you want to find everything on the U.S., you go, and this is one of the strange things about the United Nations, is you can see that you have the African region, American region, Asia Pacific region, Europe, North America, and Central Asia, and the U.S. is part of the regional group with all the Western European countries. So if you want to find the U.S., you go to Europe and other Western countries, and there you can see all the information on human rights issues that related to the U.S. that the UN had done in the past. So if you start on the top, you can see, one, the status of ratification of the different treaties that the U.S. had ratified. You can see that the U.S. in total ratified only 16 treaties out of probably more than 100 on human rights issues that the UN had adopted. The other important thing, particularly for your work, is the reporting status. Many of the human rights treaties require states to report on how they are implementing the particular treaty, and usually they have to do it either 2 years after the ratification of the treaty, and then with certain periodicity, probably every 4 years or so, depending on the treaty. And you can look here at the different treaties and when the U.S. had to report. For instance, the Convention on Against Torture, the report was due on November of 2012, and so far the U.S. had not presented its report. One of the important things about this reporting process is that every time that the U.S. files a report on the implementation on any of these particular treaties, civil society organizations such as yours have the possibility of presenting what is called a shadow report. That it means as a response or alternative view to the government's report. So, for instance, I know that you work on issues of discrimination. There is an upcoming report to the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, so you can file something about, I don't know, racial discrimination in Texas, responding to the U.S. government. These shadow reports are very, very important because of the members of the different committees tend not to be very familiar with the situation in a particular country. Many times the only information that they have is the information that they receive from the government. And even in the government's reports, they tend to be very, very general. So for instance, on racial discrimination, many times all the information will be information at the federal level with very little at the local or state level. So if you produce a report on discrimination at the state level, that will be something that some of the members of the committee will take issue with and will ask the government to provide more information or to respond to your comments. So that's something very, very important to keep in mind, this status of reporting. Then this is something that some of the UN human rights mechanisms, we can conduct visits to different countries, and some of those, to conduct a visit, we either need to have an invitation from the government, or we ask permission to the government to visit the country, and we need to have the government's permission. Some countries have extended what is called open invitations to the UN special procedures. So basically we can visit the country whenever we want, and as you can imagine, the US have not presented this open invitation. So whenever we want to visit the US, we need to have this special invitation. If you go to the bottom of this website, you could see all the different visits that the UN special procedures conducted to the US, and usually after any of these human rights special procedure visit a country, they issue a country report, or what is called a mission report. So for instance, you could see here the report on the UN Special Rapporteur on right to water and sanitation. This not working, so let's not waste time here. Now, and you could see also in this website all the concluding observations. As I mentioned, the US had to report to these different committees on the implementation of the different treaties. So, for instance, these are the concluding observations of the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination to the report of the US. The latest one is May of 2008. And usually they follow the same format. They have a very brief introductory section, and they will have several paragraphs on positive aspects of the government's policies, and then you will see that they will have a lot of what they call concerns and recommendations, and usually there will be one paragraph raising a concern on a particular topic, and then a particular recommendation to that topic. And usually this is the format of all the concluding observations of the different human rights treaty bodies. So This is particularly the best thing way to start to find information on the U.S. and the United Nations. If you want not to find particular information on the U.S., but on human rights issues in general, one of the ways to do research is going to the human rights bodies. Let's see if we can go there. Huh? So here we are. Basically, you have two main categories of human rights bodies at the United Nations level. One is are what is called the charter-based bodies, and the other are the treaty-based bodies. The charter-based bodies are those bodies that have their origin in one way or the other in the United Nations Charter, and the treaty-based bodies are those that are created by a particular human rights treaty. Currently, there are 10 or 12 treaty-based bodies, and only a couple of them are relevant to the U.S. because they are the only ones created by the treaties that the U.S. has ratified. So basically are the Human Rights Committee, the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination that we talk a little bit, the Committee Against Torture, the Committee on the Rights of the Child, because the U.S. has ratified two optional protocols on the Convention on the Rights of the Child. But probably the most important for most of the issues will be the Human Rights Committee. The Human Rights Committee was created to monitor the implementation of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights that the U.S. had ratified almost 20 years ago. You can find the text of the convention there, and it has basically all the basic civil and political rights. So there are two main or three main areas of work of the Human Rights Committee that could be relevant and important for you to be aware of. The first one is what is called general comments, and you see that you can find the general comments there. And the general comments basically are interpretations of the Human Rights Committee on different elements of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So, for instance, you are interested in freedom of religion, you have the general comment number 22 on that, and it gives you a basic understanding on how the Human Rights Committee sees this particular provision. And these are very, very important, even if these general comments are not legally binding. They have a lot of force in terms of being the proper interpretation of the treaty. There are not that many in the 30 years or 40 years of the Human Rights Committee. There are only 34 general comments. Some of them are updates on older ones, and some of them are mainly on procedural aspects of the treaty. So on substantive law, there are probably 25 or so general comments. The other important aspect of the Human Rights Committee that you may want to be familiar with are what I mentioned, the concluding observations for each of the reports on the different countries, and we already talked about that. And the final area that is really, really important is that the Human Rights Committee can receive individual complaints where individuals allege that their rights protected by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights were violated, and you can find their case law. And let me try to show you where you can find some of the case law of the different committees, including the Human Rights Committee. So if you are in the link to the human rights bodies, you go to the right and in the treaty body document search, that's one of the ways to find different documents. So, for instance, the convention, the CCPR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. You can look for countries, or if you don't know the country, here you need to have more specific information, for instance, on the dates of the document. If you don't have that information, so let's do first, let's try to find the documents on the U.S. So there you have some of the documents on the U.S. In total, in all the treaty bodies, you could see that there are only 22 documents. So there are not that many documents on treaties and the U.S. Another way to find documents is in this Universal Human Rights Index that will allow you to find all the documents on particular issues at the UN level. So, for instance, if you are interested in housing, there you can see that there are 700, almost 800 documents that mention the word housing in the document. So you can try to be more specific. For instance, you can filter by country, filter by body, and you can get here only the recommendations or other type of documents, for instance, observations. These more the areas of concern, and you can filter by country. So let's see if there's anything on the U.S. and housing. So there are 11 documents. And you could see the first one, it's the Special Rapporteur on Housing. The second is the Special Rapporteur on Racism. The Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. The Working Group on People of African Descent. So you can look at the different issues, and what this index is good about is that it not only provides you the paragraph where you have the main materials and the main word that you are searching, but also give you the state or entity, the type of right that is implicated and the affected person. So in the first one, everybody is affected. In the second one, you have minorities, racial, ethnic, linguistic, religious minorities. So you could see that this is a useful way to find documents in this Universal Human Rights Index. Let me go back. I don't know if you want to ask me more specific questions about this basic search the UN. If not, I can move on. Hello?
Ariel, can you explain when we're citing international covenants, human rights covenants, is this the are these original sources that you're giving us here?
Yeah, no. I will go to that. If you need to cite the official source is this one, the United Nations Treaty Collection. Let me go there. So there you have, this is where all the UN treaties are deposited. These are the official version, and here you will have all the official information. So let's say that you are searching International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So here is, and this is the official version. And basically here is how you cited from this one is the name of the treaty, the date and place where the treaty was adopted, and this is where you find the official version. So this is the official version, and then it's important here to see that you will have all the official dates of the different countries when they sign, when they access or ratify the treaty. So if you are looking for United States, let's see, you see that the U.S. ratified signed the treaty on October 5th, 1977, and ratified on June 8th, 1992. And if there are any reservations to the treaty, you will find the ratifications with all the reservations here. So here you have the official text of the reservation by the U.S. For instance, it gives you everything that the U.S. said, and particularly, for instance, in the ICCPR, the U.S. not only filed some reservations, but also some understandings, you can see here, and declarations as well. So, in fact, whenever you read any particular treaty, it's not enough for you to read the text of the treaty, but you need to read the text of the ratification instrument by the U.S. just to see if the U.S. did not file any type of reservations, understanding, or declaration. And usually the U.S. always ratifies treaties with these reservations or declarations or understanding. So it's very, very important. Among other things, declaring that the treaties are not self-executing. So basically saying that it requires additional legislation to be considered part of domestic law. So that's an important thing. But again, the official documents and versions are here in the United Nations Treaty Collection. You can find also documents, any type of UN documents in this website that is also part of the UN is official documents. So here you find every type of official UN document. Usually you can do different type of search. If you know the symbol of the UN, you can do a search by those documents. So, for instance, I have here in front of me one document that I know the symbol, and let's see if I can get the document. Great, one document found. I don't know. Here is the document. So you find there the official title, the citation, in which languages it is, and I can get the document. So this is, for instance, follow-up procedures of human rights treaty bodies on concluding observations, inquiries, and visits. If you don't know the symbol of the United Nations, you can do a full text search. So let's check it, see if we can do housing. Let's see what we get there. Okay, it's taking too long, but you could see how in this site, the documents.un.org, you can search for all the official documents, either by the symbol of the UN, and you will become more and more familiar with these symbols the more you use the UN documents. Usually if a document starts with an A, it means that is a resolution from the General Assembly. The 52 usually is the session number of that body, and this is the chronological order of the different documents. Most of the human rights documents will start with an E/CN, that was the former Commission on Human Rights, and now they will start with an HRC, that is a Human Rights Council. Whenever you see res, for instance here, a res, that it means that is a resolution of the, because we see that is an A, is a resolution of the General Assembly. We see an S, is the Security Council, and you can see the different possibilities. So you will see that when you do your search. Another website that is very useful is it's called the UNIQ, that is the United Nations InfoQuest. That is another way to find some useful United Nations information. So let's see if we can find documents on the right to health. Here you find all the documents related to the right to health. These are particularly the report of the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the right to health. So here, just to see a symbol, A for General Assembly, HRC, that it means that the report was filed to the Human Rights Council in its 20th session, and is the document number 15. So if you are interested in this, and for instance, this is a report that is on Ghana and on Vietnam. And so you know that if you are interested in Syria, there you have some information. So this is a basic way, and this is the way to cite the documents with this particular symbol and the date of the that document. Any other questions on the UN?
So just to recap, Claudia, the United Nations treaty collection is specifically for treaties, but then if you want to go beyond that, any documents, resolutions, that sort, go to ODS.
ODS, yeah, exactly.
And either of those would be the official source for those to
exactly.
citation purpose.
Yes. Exactly.
So and essentially, where you've gone from is the United Nations, like the human rights.
Office of the High Commissioner.
Office of the High Commissioner, and that we can use that as a way to do search.
Yes.
But once we get to the where we want to actually use the treaties, the citations, we would go to the treaty.
And my experience is that for all the international sources, I will not only include the official citation, but also the link to the pertinent document. Basically, if you go, particularly if you are doing some kind of litigation here, and probably the judges and the clerks are not going to be familiar with many of these documents, I couldn't only put the official citation of the document, but also the link to the particular website where they can find the document. I found that is the most useful way to educate the courts and clerks.
And in terms of the link that would be most useful for the courts, would that be, for example, with the human rights treaties and conventions? Would you cite the Office of the High Commissioner as a readable way to read the treaty?
Yes. Because in the Office of the High Commissioner, I don't know if now they have it, but one of the things that they used to have in the past is that for each, for instance, if you are citing Article 14 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, if there was a general comment on that particular article, they would have in the official text a link to the particular general comment. So that's another useful way to educate the courts and clerks. Okay? Should I continue?
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Okay, so basically with the US you have only two systems where you can bring human rights issues related to the US. One is the United Nations, and the United Nations only with regard to these particular treaties that the US has ratified, but you cannot bring individual cases against the U.S. In the human rights system because the U.S. had not accepted the competence of any of these particular committees to receive individual complaints. And let's see, now it appears. But there is another that we already talked a little bit, another possibility with the UN, that are these UN special procedures. There are more than 20 special procedures today for country-specific situations, only for countries with a really bad situation, or thematic issues. In terms of the thematic issues, you can bring both individual complaints where you allege that a person or a group of persons' rights are being violated by the U.S., and usually they issue some type of opinion or write a letter to the government asking for more information. Just to give you an example, we with my students at the Human Rights Clinic, we filed a brief last November to the working group on arbitrary detention on behalf of one of the Guantanamo detainees, alleging that his detention is arbitrary. So now we, the working group asked the U.S. government to respond to our allegations, and we are waiting for that. We will have a chance to respond to the U.S. allegations. Right. So, and there are several special rapporteurs that are very, very important for some of the issues that you work on. So there is a special rapporteur, as I mentioned, on the right to housing. There is a special rapporteur on migrant workers, a special rapporteur on minorities, on racial discrimination, on arbitrary detention, on violence against women, on the right to health, on the right to education. There is a working group on people of African descent, a working group on equality of women. And each of these special rapporteurs, either they conduct country missions, or they conduct thematic studies on different particular issues, and you can look at that as an important area. But the other, besides the UN, the other place where you can go with complaints against the U.S. is the Inter-American system, the human rights system created within the framework of the Organization of American States. The main body that you may use is the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. And this is very, very important. The Inter-American Commission is basically the only international human rights body that can adjudicate cases against the U.S. So, where do you find the documents related to the Inter-American Commission? You go to the website of the Commission, and in publication you have these basic documents. And these are the official documents of the Inter-American system. The main document for the U.S. is the American Declaration of the Rights and Duties of Man. And here you have the version with all the rights and duties. And so this is the official version. You can find it there. If you are looking for a particular case, you find this in petition and cases, and in merits decisions is the decision on the merits of any particular complaint. You can find the cases of, for instance, here you have all the cases decided on 2011 on the merits. You have 2 on the U.S. So I know that some of you work on issues of domestic violence. This is a very, very important case, the Jessica Lenaham or the Gonzalez case. Probably some of you, if you don't know the decision of the Inter-American Commission, is this case in Castle Rock, Colorado, that reached the Supreme Court, and basically is a case of domestic violence where the U.S. Supreme Court said that you don't have a right to claim that a restraint order was not properly enforced by the police. So the commission, the Inter-American Commission, in this case basically ruled against the U.S., and this will be the way that if you want to cite this case, basically you copy this, and you would say Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, report number 80/11, that it means that was adopted in 2011, case, the number of the case, merits, it means that it's a decision on the merits, and the name of the case against the U.S. and the date of the case, and then you say paragraph 1 or whatever is the paragraph. You will find most of the cases here on the U.S. Will be mainly, I would say 3 or 4 main areas. One are, there are many cases on death penalty, several coming, not surprisingly, from Texas, a lot of them on the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, but are on juvenile death penalty, on the imposition of the death penalty to mentally ill people. Then there is one important case on Native American rights, a couple of cases on immigration, and there's one on the rights of the residents of Washington, D.C. to vote. So basically, these are the main cases decided by the Commission. In total, in the last 10 years, the Commission decided around 16 cases against the U.S. So, and here is where you find all the cases decided by the Commission. The Inter-American Commission has also created some rapporteurs, similar to the rapporteurships of the United Nations. And so if you are working on cases of violence against women, you may want to look at the rapporteurship on the rights of women of the Inter-American Commission. And you have, for instance, one special report on access to justice for women victims of sexual violence, education and health. So here you can have all the reports, and also in each of the rapporteurships you can have all the important decisions on each of the topics of the particular rapporteurship. There is one that you may be interested in, and some of you probably are familiar with, is the rapporteurship on the rights of migrants. Had produced a report on the U.S. And is on the detention of, on immigration in the U.S., detention and due process. That is a quite good report. And even if it's on detention, it has a lot of materials in terms of due process and immigrants that could be useful in other areas as well. So these are particularly the main areas where you may be interested in looking at. Is the Inter-American, the petitions and cases, and here you find them, and the rapporteurship if you are working on any particular issue. And in publications, you may go to the thematic reports, and here you have reports on different situations. So if you have a case on death penalty, you have this really good book on the death penalty in the Inter-American human rights system that basically summarizes all the case law of the Inter-American system in this area. Any question on this, on the Inter-American Commission? Good. So the other body at the OAS level is the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, that even if it doesn't have jurisdiction over the U.S., because the U.S. has not accepted ratified the American Convention and accepted the jurisdiction of the court, the Commission follows the Inter-American Court very, very closely. So if you don't find any case law in the Inter-American Commission, you may want to look at the Inter-American Court to find some relevant information, and all the case law of the court is here to students that got stuck now. And basically there are two possibilities. One are decisions on individual cases, and one in these advisory opinions that basically are opinions of the court not related to a particular case, and some of them are related to the U.S., even if the U.S. is not has not ratified the convention. So, for instance, Mexico, after the Supreme Court handed down the decision in the Hoffman Plastic case on undocumented workers, Mexico brought a request for an advisory opinion to the Inter-American Court, more or less on the same issues, and the court in 2003 issued a really good and quite progressive advisory opinion on the conditions and rights of undocumented migrants. So you may want to use that as a standard, and basically is very, very critical implicitly of the U.S. Supreme Court decision in the Hoffman plastic case. So this is another way to look for case law. The final system that I wanted to talk about is the European human rights system. Even as you know, that this is a system adopted in the context of the Council of Europe, and thus is not binding on the U.S., we just concluded a research with my students, and we found that in Westlaw there are more citations in cases of the European system or the European Convention on Human Rights than citation of the International Covenant on Civil and on the Human Rights Committee, the UN Human Rights Committee, or the decision of the Commission or Inter-American Commission or Inter-American Court. So it appears that for some courts in the U.S., the European precedents are more persuasive than the Inter-American or United Nations precedents. So this is a very, very important source of interpretation, and you may want to use it or at least be familiar with. And the other thing that is good about the European system is that is the easiest one to conduct a search. Basically, if you go to the European Court of Human Rights, to the case law, and you go to this database, the HUDOC, there you can find all the pertinent documents or any topic, and also the size of the case law is much bigger than any other human rights system. So it's a really good place to do some research. Let's see if we can do.
It seems like the internet is against you right now, Ariel.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's a good show on how we do human rights research. We face all these challenges. So let's see if we find something on violence against women. Let's see. No. Okay. Oh, there. So here you have all the cases on. So there is a reference to violence against women, just to facilitate your work. This Opus v. Turkey, this is the leading case on violence against women, so you can read that one and get a good sense of what the European Court says about violence against women. Okay. So basically, you do any type of searches here in HUDOC, you have the case, and you cite as it is here. It's a European Court of Human Rights, third section, case, application number, and then you will have the date of the decision. Here you have the date of the decision, and that's the official citation of the case, and then you will have the case. So basically this is the European system. Then I would like just to finish, and so we have some time for additional questions. 2, 4, or 5 sites where you can find very useful information. The first and probably the most complete human rights library and human rights database and human rights website is the University of Minnesota Human Rights Library. There you have all the documents. You can see more than 65,000 documents on human rights documents and materials on very, very different issues, from treaties and international instruments, United Nations documents, regional materials. So you may find here the African Commission, decisions of the Inter-American Commission as well. But this is really good. And then you find you can do some searches on particular issues. You find in these bibliographies and research guides different guides to conduct human rights research. Some of these are really good, and how to do research on different topics. So keep in mind this. The University of Minnesota Human Rights Library is really, really excellent. The other website that is very, very useful is the Electronic Information System for International Law, that is done and kept updated by the American Society of International Law, and you have a lot of information and documents and primary sources on different issues, including international human rights. The good thing about this is that you have a classification on different issues, so sometimes it's easier. So for instance, if you are dealing with documents on an issue on people with disability, a person with disability, you have the primary documents, all the different conventions on the rights of people with disabilities, and you may have some more information on the different instruments where you can find and other additional documents. So this the electronic side of the American Society of International Law, it's another good website to find documents. Great. If you are looking for a document from the United Nations, this is a really good website, Bajewski.com. He was a professor in Canada, and basically he has a whole database up to date on all the human rights bodies of the United Nations. Has a really good classifications in terms of topics, and it has a really good document on how you select the body that you want to go to, if you have the possibility of selecting between 2 or 3 different human rights bodies. So this is really a good place to do some research on the UN. And finally, CIMOR is a Dutch center, the Netherlands Institute of Human Rights. It has a really good database with the summaries of many of the human rights treaties. So you don't have all the cases there, but at least you can find a summary of the case and the type of arguments, and it has a link to the official site of and the official version of the case that you are reading. So this is a really good, so you can conduct a search by subject. So if you are interested in juvenile detention, you have 2 general comments and 2 cases on that, on juvenile detention. So let's see if we have, I don't know, if discrimination on the ground of national origin. So you have 2 cases on on that. The one against Latvia and the other against Croatia. You go and here you have all the whole document. Sometimes they have only the summary, sometimes the whole document or a summary of the document. Here you could see that it's not complete the document. But it's a good site to search for documents, Netherlands Institute for Human Rights. And a final place website to find documents is the State Department website. There, the State Department has a section in its website on treaties in force, where it collects all the treaties that the U.S. had ratified, and it's really up to date, this website. So you will know here that is basically the official, the U.S. official information. So if you go to the document, let's see when, so it's not so updated, it's January 2012, but you will see, let's see, that I believe that they have also the official names of the treaties. Here is for instance, if you are interested in this treaty with Afghanistan, here is the official citation. And if you remember the UN treaty collection that we saw in the first slide, this is the reference, UN treaty series, and this is the reference. So in each one, the UST is the United States treaties. This one, I really don't know what's the meaning, but here you have the official citation for all the treaties that the U.S. had ratified. So, but at the end of the day, even with all this, it's, if you don't know what you are searching, it tends to be very time-consuming and very difficult to find documents. So there you have my email address. So whenever you are stuck with any type of research, you can't find the document, just send me an email, and I'm more than willing to help you with your research, and at least try to help you where you can look at. So, are there any questions or comments or ideas?
Ariel, I have a question. One of the I see, like in citations where it says UNTS.
Yes.
Is that the treaty website that you're talking that pointed us to?
Yeah. If you go to the treaty collection, sorry. If you go to the treaty collection, the information that you will get there is a UNTS. Let me. See, here is the UNTS.
Oh,
there.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I understand, and the reason why I asked is because when I was looking at site forms, it seems like the Blue Book, and specifically Rule 21 of the most recent, the 19th edition, is fairly thorough in terms of how to cite international materials, and it has as one of the options the UNTS.
Yeah. So here you find all of them.
So I guess the point is for those of you all starting on citation, looking up these laws, that if you don't have a more recent Blue Book like I didn't, the most recent one has a lot more support for international materials than previous one.
Yeah, and every year the Blue Book is getting better and better. Yeah. Yeah, it's really getting better, not only in terms of primary sources, but also how to cite foreign sources, and even if you find an article published by a foreign law review, you can find the material, how to cite in the latest version of the Blue Book.
Well, this is great, Adia. Are there any questions that people have? Now we have them on the phone, so you can ask any questions if you've done any research, had some problems, or just have general questions about what Professor Zalewski has been explaining to us. Any questions? That's a good sign. I guess you were very thorough enough so that nobody has the information sunk in well. Well, listen. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was great, and thank you for offering to assist if anybody has any questions. In the process of the presentation, I put up a I did a whole bunch of links on one sheet of paper that I'm going to send everybody, both of the different websites that Professor Zalewski visited. But this has been really great. I don't know if anybody has any final comments.
So,
and if not,
the is and I know that the Washington College of Law has great people and great resources, but if you want to talk about strategies on how to use human rights law and the different possibilities, and when you are confronted with a case or a situation, I'm more than willing to talk about that as well. So yeah, you can count on me and my students, even if you give us enough time, we can help you with some research. So if you know that you want to start working on a particular issue and you would like us to conduct some research, we can talk about it.
And on that note, I will mention that school has already started for this semester, so now's the time to take them up on that.
Great.
Right.
Ariel and Nelson, this is Lauren. We got a question online, which is, are you able to find the treaties that have been ratified by the U.S. on Westlaw or Lexis?
I don't know. I don't know
Westlaw, but I can tell you that treaties that have been ratified by the United States are available on Lexis. But in the human rights sphere, there are not that many of them. So I mean, the research that you're going to do, Lexis is a good source, perhaps initially, to see if you can find texts of things. For example, if the convention has been, or the treaty has been transmitted to the Senate for ratification, then that transmittal package will be available on Lexis. You know, but there are plenty that have not been transmitted, and there are plenty that have not been, you know, ratified by the United States. So there is some international information available, documents, conventions. but what Professor Dulitsky went through is actually more thorough than Lexis. And I know this because that's actually where I started in terms of trying to determine what was available for research. And I actually had a Lexis representative sit down with me and go through what their international materials are. And she concluded the session with an apology and the hope that they were going to be increasing their library.
Yeah, so my experience is with Westlaw and Lexis is I never conduct research on primary sources on Westlaw or Lexis for international materials. I search only if I want to try to find a law review article or things like that on the particular issue. But if I want to find the treaties or the case law, I never use Westlaw or Lexis.
Any other questions, Lauren?
That was all we got so far.
Okay.
All right.
So thank you very much.
I think we can conclude the presentation. Thank you so much, Adio, for your presentation, and we really appreciate your assistance.
Sure. You know now where you can find me. So good luck.
Thank you, Ariel.
Okay, sure. Bye-bye.